Hi, this is Zachary Basler, and this is my presentation entitled The Frequency, Portrayal, and Importance of LGBTQ Characters in Young Adult Literature. This is for the Graduate School of Education in the Department of Library and Information Science, course LIS 536. I'd like to apologize in advance for any time that I may stumble over the acronym LGBTQ, as it can be a bit of a tongue twister when you say it over and over and over again. For the focus of my presentation, is the frequent occurrence of LGBTQ characters and how they positively can benefit young adult patrons, especially those who consider themselves to be LGBTQ. Now, to even the playing field and create some common ground within this presentation, I'd like to identify what LGBTQ is, especially as it pertains to this presentation. LGBTQ is an acronym that is meant to cover multiple sexual orientations on a varied spectrum. This particular acronym includes a lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning or queer. Some acronyms exist that span beyond these five, but just for my presentation, only these are included. The essential question that drove my research in this presentation was, how can the inclusion of young adult literature with frequent and positive portrayals of LGBTQ characters be beneficial for young adult LGBTQ patrons? And this also spans just beyond the LGBTQ patrons to the individuals who will be interacting and communicating with LGBTQ individuals. This is important because of the rising prominence of young people that are now either going to allow themselves to feel more comfortable with the possibility or prospect of coming out or identifying their own sexual identity, or those who are willing to become more tolerant and accepting of LGBTQ youth. The positive and more frequent appearance of LGBTQ youth in children's and young adult literature will help those struggling with their own sexual identity to relate with characters facing similar experiences, and so that they don't feel necessarily alone in the world and that they understand that others have gone through these experiences. It also helps to create an overall positive image of LGBTQ youth for those who interact and communicate with these individuals. For my presentation, I used 3 databases to gather and compile my research. I used Education Source, Library Literature and Information Science full text, and Library Information Science and Technology abstracts with full text. I used a variety of search terms and keywords within these databases to limit and narrow my search to bring back the most relevant and informational articles relating to my topic. The ones that I used more commonly were young adult, literature, adolescent, LGBTQ, gay, homosexual, bisexual, transgender, lesbian, portrayal, positive, and frequency. While compiling my research, I noticed 3 topics that were of particular interest to me that sort of stood out above the rest of the research related to LGBTQ youth and LGBTQ young adult literature. These 3 topics were the growing desire for LGBTQ characters in various forms of young adult literature other than novels, for example, a graphic novel or comic, the intersect of faith and LGBTQ themes in young adult literature, and the lack of bisexual and transgender representation in this literature. Going back to the first topic that I mentioned, teens and young adults are reading more than just novels, and the popularity of graphic novels alone is rising. But at the same time, libraries may actually struggle to find or select or promote these graphic novels or comics that contain LGBTQ issues and characters. According to some research, there are offerings out there to provide these LGBTQ characters in young adult literature in the form of graphic novels. However, a lot of these works are going to be self-published and therefore do not necessarily reach mass distribution. And if they cannot be found, then they cannot be provided. Some major players in the comic and graphic novels game are starting to feature some gay characters in the stories. More recently, the DC Comics Green Lantern has become a big game changer in the graphic novel industry, now featuring a gay superhero. One of the most interesting, if probably not the most interesting topic that I discovered during my research is the lack of positive portrayal of LGBTQ young adults who also consider themselves to be spiritual or religious. There has been research to show that young adult literature and novels possess the potential of helping LGBTQ individuals when they face that conflicting intersection of faith and sexual orientation, and it allows them to move forward without necessarily having to forfeit one or the other. And this is increasingly important as we do live in a society where there is somewhat a cultural construct that states you cannot be homosexual and religious at the same time. A good example of young adult literature that masterfully handles the combination of these things is The God Box by Alex Sanchez, which features a young gay man who suddenly has to face his own sexual identity while trying to maintain his beliefs as a Christian at the same time. Another interesting topic, and the last one that I'll mention in this presentation that I noticed in my research, is the lack of bisexual and transgender representation in the LGBTQ acronym. A lot of the literature that is available that features LGBTQ characters strongly leans towards the L and the G, the lesbian and the gay, and don't necessarily cross over so much into the B and the T, the bisexual and the transgender. However, there are some works of literature that are becoming more prominently known and actually becoming award winning, as the example Beautiful Music for Ugly Children by Kirsten Kwan Mills, which won the ALA Stonewall Book Award for its particular category. Some helpful resources that aided in my research are the Lambda Literary Book Club, the Young Adult Library Services Association Guide to YA Novels with LGBTQ Characters, the ALA Stonewall Award Book List, the University of Illinois Children's Literature blog, and the author Alex Sanchez's website, and he provides a list of books for gay teens who are struggling with their sexual identity. The results of my research have shown that the frequency of positive LGBTQ characters in young adult literature does have the potential and can positively affect young adults who may or may not be struggling with their own sexual identity. It is important to be inclusive of this literature in collections for young adults, but it is also equally as important to promote these kinds of materials so that a positive image is being perpetrated amongst our youth, and so that they do not feel alone. Thank you.